It is the third Saturday in October. Locked On Vols meets Locked On Bama, this Locked On crossover edition, right now.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it, Thursday morning edition. Thanks so much for making us your first listen, your first watch. I am Eric Kane, host of Locked On Vols. He is Luke Robinson, host of Locked On Bama. Again, it is rivalry week, third Saturday in October. This game means an awful lot to a lot of people. And Luke, it is a monumental football game for both programs. Can't wait to break it down with you here in the next 30 minutes. This episode is brought to you in part by FanDuel Sportsbook. Your first $5 bet, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to go ahead and get started today. You know, you and I have done crossover shows the last couple of years, and I always like to hear your perspective of what this game means to you, because I know it means an awful lot. What does this game mean to you, Tennessee, Alabama?
You know, what it really means is, like, sadly, it's the midway point of the season. I was at the game back in 1988 in Knoxville when Tennessee came into the game, I think, 0-5, and Alabama comes in and beats them to take them to 0-6. Tennessee doesn't lose again until the next time they meet in the third Saturday of October game in Legion Field in 1989. And Alabama fans will remember that as the Saran Stacy explodes game. That's what Brent Musburger's call was. But I was at both of those games. I mean, I've been to Knoxville a bunch of times to go check out this contest. I always had a blast. I was there in 96 in the rain when Jay Graham took it all the way, like they were just trying to run the clock out and take it in overtime. And Jay Graham goes all the way. I was there in 94 when Peyton Manning made his first appearance. And I've been to a lot of – I was there in 95 when Peyton Manning led the band in Legion Field. So, I mean, I've been there for a lot of fun Alabama-Tennessee games. And it's always like the halfway point of the season. It's always like just a game that signifies, hey, we've already gone through half of this stuff. I can't believe it. I took some heat today on the podcast because I've said, look, I don't feel about Tennessee the way I feel about Auburn, but I grew up close to Auburn. I think Auburn's the main rival. I hate to even admit it, but it's true. And I would rather beat Auburn than beat Tennessee 100% of the time. Now, that said, I appreciate the Alabama-Tennessee rivalry more than I appreciate a lot of other rivalries. But I get why I totally get why a lot of Alabama fans loathe Tennessee, and mostly because of Phil Fulmer. I get it. But I'm just saying, I got over the Phil Fulmer stuff, and winning about 15 in a row will help you get over it.
I was going to say, so like, you know, my lifetime, it's been, you know, I remember as a kid, this series has always been a series of streaks. When I was a kid, man, it was Tennessee whipping Alabama's tail every single year. It wasn't 15 in a row, but I mean, it was, you know, 4 or 5, you know, and then it would go in the other direction for a little bit, right? And then, of course, as you mentioned, 15 in a row with Nick Saban, you know, that kind of stinks for people, especially in my age group. But, you know, it's funny, like, this is an absolute rivalry game. You know, for Tennessee fans, it depends on, you know, what age group you ask. My grandfather says Vanderbilt Commodores, got to be Vanderbilt every single time. Well, that's true, but is it really a rivalry game? My dad would tell you Alabama. I would tell you Florida. But again, like, that was only a rivalry game since 92, and that's kind of been one-sided as well. So I love this game, though. I think that the history in college football, the history of these two programs, it's super exciting. Storyline so far for this season, man. I mean, obviously 5-1, 2-1. Both these teams kind of sit there. Both these teams have a loss that they didn't expect preseason. Tennessee at Arkansas, obviously Alabama at Vanderbilt. Take the floor, man. We all saw the Georgia game. We all saw Alabama hold on, give it away, and then take it right back. And then we saw what happened the next week. The roller coaster season, first year post Nick Saban. How's it been so far?
It's been just that, a roller coaster. I mean, you beat Georgia, and the Georgia game in itself was a roller coaster, and it was just crazy. I mean, I never thought we'd score 28 points on Georgia in that game, much less in the first, you know, quarter and a half.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Ryan Williams, who should be a senior in high school, everybody knows.
17,
he makes an unbelievable catch and is able to, you know, pirouette and then accelerate and beat 2 Georgia defensive backs. And I don't care if you're a Georgia defensive back, you're a dude. And he's able to beat them both to the end zone, and it was crazy, right? And then of course, you have the Vanderbilt game, which felt so surreal. I was watching it with a bunch of Bama fans, and it was almost like, yeah, we're going to win this just any minute now. And then the next thing you know, we don't win it. And it's sort of like, I felt like the brothers in Trading Places, like turn those machines back on, But and then, of course, South Kakalaki. There we are. We score on the first drive, look good doing it. We had Ryan Williams open for a touchdown. Don't hit him deep. We miss him. And on the second drive, and next thing you know, South Carolina's right in the middle of it because there's some boneheaded decisions. Alabama got a half the distance to the goal penalty because on a touchback. Never even heard of that.
No.
And so it put them on the 12 and a half instead of the 25, which led to a safety. And just, it was sort of a snowball effect. And then, at the end of the game, you felt like, okay, Alabama's finally got this thing under control. They give up a 4th and 9 for a touchdown. They give up another long pass for a touchdown to Nicholas Harbor, who is just a freakazoid, by the way. And then they don't get the onside kick. It's just, there's been a lot of funky stuff going on with Alabama ever since Georgia.
It's kind of weird for Tennessee. It's been a little bit of, maybe at this point in the season, 5-1 expected, but how you got there has been very, very different, right? I mean, Josh Heupel's offense, high scoring, tempo. I got news for you. This is going to be the slowest, if they continue pace of where they are right now, no pun intended, this will be the slowest Tennessee offense you've seen in the last 3 years. That, like, tempo, they'll go tempo sometimes, then they'll stop. They'll go tempo sometimes, then they'll slow it down. Like, I don't get it. Sometimes it's self-inflicting wounds like penalties or, turnovers or whatever. But, like, they've slowed it down this year, and I don't think that's really good. But nonetheless, it's this offense that had such high expectations with quarterback Nico Iamaleava, and in conference play, it's been non-existent. It's been bad. But the defense that we all thought was going to take a step this year and look pretty good, it's been dominant. And sure, I recognize it. Arkansas, Oklahoma, NC States, Florida, they're not winning any offensive awards this year. I get it. But, you said, like, whenever you get to Tennessee, Alabama, you truly are halfway point of the season. That just kind of dawned on me this week. Wow, Tennessee's played 6 games already. You kind of are who you are, right? I mean, This defense is good. This defense is one of the best ones in the SEC, one of the best ones in the country. So it doesn't mean Alabama's not going to make some plays, because Alabama will. But it's been kind of unique to see how the two sides of the football have operated. Now, I think Tennessee's offense, if you can protect your young quarterback, I think you're close. They missed on a couple of down-the-field passes the other day that, I heard you say on the SEC Squad show, like, if Milroe hit Williams on that one in the first quarter, changes the game. Same thing for Tennessee, absolutely changes the game, but you didn't get it. One constant's been Dylan Sampson. He's been phenomenal this year. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster as well, but I think for Alabama, for Tennessee, at this point in the season, 5-1, you're like, okay, that's about what expected.
Yeah, I think most everybody probably would have predicted, hey, both these teams come in here 5-1. They just wouldn't expected the losses to be where they were, to Vanderbilt and Arkansas. I don't think people would have called that at all. So, in fact, I'm one of the fools that fell into the NC State trap. I thought at the beginning of the year, I was like, NC State, Grayson McCall, this coach is pretty good. Their schedule sets up beautifully. If they get by Tennessee, I think they're right there in the playoff picture.
It looked good on paper. Paper. So did Ole Miss.
Yep. You're absolutely right. And again, I think the moral of the story is you are what you are at this point in the season, number one. But I think historically you are what you are too. Like NC State, they might eventually make the playoff, sure. But I should have not fallen for the flash in the pan because they haven't shown enough to get there. I mean, Tennessee humiliated them. Now, other teams have humiliated them since then. I mean, I forget who it was that beat them at home just recently. Like it was not a great team. And maybe was it Rutgers? I can't remember who beat them at home recently. And I was like, they had the lead most of the game. They just can't finish anything. And then Clemson beat up on them pretty good. But, in the end, Tennessee and Alabama are still right here. And contrary to popular belief, and let's talk about it in the second segment, I don't think this is an elimination game for the playoffs necessarily.
Okay, it's funny because I literally had a show earlier this week that said this is a play-in game, elimination game, must-win game, whatever you want to phrase it. So I'm kind of on the other end of that. So that's a good point. Let's talk about that when we come back right here on this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Vols and Locked On Bama. Hey guys, want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel, NFL fans, you can get off to a big start to the season with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. All you need to do to get started is $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, and you're going to, when you place your $5 bet, so place that $5 bet, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's on NFL Sundays. But hey, this is a college show, college football. We're going to do picks in segment 3. Tennessee, a 2.5-point dog at home. According to FanDuel Sportsbook, that totals at 56.5. No spoilers. I don't know if we're gonna be liking the over in this football game. Just a hunch. I don't know. I know that's lame, but we'll get to that here in a moment. Put some coin in your pocket this NFL season and this college football season over at FanDuel Sportsbook. It is America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel. It is where you can make every moment more. All right, guys, welcome back into a crossover Thursday. Locked on Vols and Locked on Alabama. Locked on Bama. Luke Robinson, I'm Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and getting a load of this, man. So you had a nice little tease there, kind of set it up. It's you don't think this is an elimination game? Kind of show your work here.
No, because look, if it was an elimination game, that would mean the loser's out, and yeah. I just don't think that to be true. Look, I even believe that there is a scenario where you can get in with 3 losses, probably both these teams. I think definitely Alabama because Wisconsin's sort of resuscitated themselves a little bit back to life, and Alabama also has that big win over Georgia, which counts for a lot. The loss to Vanderbilt hurts, but then Vanderbilt's playing much better than Vanderbilt normally does, and that's going to help out. So my point is this, that let's say Alabama loses to Tennessee and then wins out. I will bet you whatever you want on FanDuel or any other service, Alabama will get in the playoffs.
No, I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if Tennessee loses but wins out, I say Tennessee gets in. I would be willing to bet anything of that because you have a win at Georgia now, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the backside of Tennessee's schedule is not the most arduous you've ever seen, but you will have a win at Georgia, and that will make up for. And then, of course, your loss will be to Alabama, who will clearly probably still be in the playoffs too. So I feel like at that point you're like, hey, okay, yeah, we're probably right in the thick of this thing. And then when you look around the country, I think you don't talk about these things in a vacuum where, okay, yeah, it makes sense that if you lose 2 games out of your first 7 that you would be out. But it's a 12-team playoff. It's outside of the group of 5 champion is really probably the 11 best teams with that team factored in. And you're telling me, I mean, a Tennessee team that did schedule NC State, I know they've turned out to be a dud, but I think scheduling them counts for something. And then you talk about playing Alabama, you talk about playing Georgia, obviously. I'm trying to think what else was Tennessee, the loss to Arkansas, but Arkansas is playing better.
Oklahoma, that's kind of a dud, yeah, but
they're kind of a dud, but I think people can. Oklahoma's only got 2 losses themselves. Now they're going to have a lot more. I think they'll get one this weekend against South Carolina, frankly, and they'll have a lot more. But it's still Oklahoma. This is still a team that it's a brand name that's going to help. So I don't think it's an elimination game at all, nor do I think the winner is definitely in, because I think, there's still some pitfalls everywhere.
Yeah, I've heard people kind of characterize it or phrase it, elimination game, play-in game, must-win game. I look at it this way, because I agree, it's not an elimination game because you're exactly right. Both teams, the loser, that's your second loss, you run the table, you're in. Like, you 100%. Are in. You would like to avoid Atlanta, which I think you will, but you're in. It's not necessarily a play-in game because if you win this game, it doesn't mean you're automatically in. But I do think it's a must-win game, and really the same could be said for Alabama since the loss to Vanderbilt, and the same could be said for Tennessee since the loss to Arkansas. Because I look at Tennessee's schedule, and I know you don't cover Tennessee, you don't watch every single snap 7 times like I do. Tennessee's got a road problem. Okay, Tennessee's got a road problem. Tennessee doesn't perform well on the road, and where this offense is right now, which we'll get into here in a second, it's not producing like it normally does. So if Tennessee loses this game, and of course lost to Arkansas, what confidence do I have that Tennessee's going to go on the road in Athens on November 16th and win that football game to keep college football playoff hopes alive? I don't have confidence. So it's one of those, like, you need to win this game, because I don't think you're going to beat Georgia right now. And I do think, at least right now, you have a better chance of beating Alabama at home. And I like this matchup more. at least on paper. We'll see what it does on the schedule. So
I think
anyway,
that's fair.
It's a big game. Yeah.
That's fair. At the same time, I'm not discounting Tennessee getting their act together offensively and going to Georgia and putting up some points. Yep. I mean, Mississippi State just went over there and put up 31. Heck, Auburn put up 13, and the way Auburn's been playing, that is a offensive explosion. So, yeah, I think that if Tennessee if Nico can get himself together, and look, I think he's clearly one of the more talented quarterbacks in the country. But he's got sort of a confidence problem right now. It's like whenever he's supposed to zig, he zags, and vice versa. It's just not clicking for him right now. We've been there with Jalen Milroe, and when it comes together, Jalen Milroe is as good a quarterback as anybody. And I think
let me phrase it to you this way. Nico right now is playing like a first-year starter who's a redshirt freshman.
Yep.
He is getting – his offensive line has been – the most disappointing part to date, and again, I'm like you, man. I got confidence in they can turn around because they improved from Arkansas 2 weeks ago to Florida this past week. If you can continue to improve a little bit, you're going to be a pretty good ball club. And Nico's got so much talent, but he's getting hit all the time.
Yeah.
And on plays where they actually, provide a clean pocket for him, he gets a little antsy and he's wanting to duck out. It's like, dude, you're not going to get hit. You're good. But I mean, it's kind of like muscle memory at that point. He's doing that. He's staring. He's got 2 picks this year where he's just staring down a receiver in triple coverage and throwing the football. And it's like, no, you can't do that. Bad. But it's like he's just staring him down completely. Like young quarterbacks do that. He's also made a ton of off-platform throws. He's thrown balls into super tight windows. He was off by a matter of a couple of feet, maybe inches, on a couple of deep balls, last week. He's super talented. So I do think this offense can get a little bit better. I'm glad you brought up Jalen Milroe because I want to hit on this in this segment. I think Jalen Milroe, I've said it completely. Like, when he's off, he's pretty shaky, pretty pedestrian, but he's not off that much. He is on, and I think he's one of the best players in college football. Big guy, I think he still progressed as a passer, but the last 4 games, I believe he's had double-digit rushing attempts. I mean, obviously his legs are a huge focal point. I don't want to say that's Alabama's rushing game because that's not true, but it's a huge part of Alabama's rushing game.
It's kind of true.
And you mentioned this earlier in the show, talking about his deep throw. I think it was the SEC squad. I actually went to Pro Football Focus and kind of looked up his throws 20 yards or more down the field. Dude, like he's completing like 55% of this pass. That's really good for deep balls. How has he matured even more this year?
I love Jalen Milroe, by the way, and I got to meet him last year at a Christmas party for a guy who is having him do some advertising, marketing, NIL stuff, whatever. And I got to talk with him for a little bit, and the dude is just magnetic. I mean, he is like just somebody you want to be the ambassador of your program. The catch with that it feels like now that is sort of what he's being. Like I'm seeing him almost be that too much. I would like to see angry Milroe a little bit. Yes, occasionally. And, because that's what a leader has to do is get in somebody's face occasionally, not in a, real confrontational way, but in a way to say, hey, man, we got to get this going, and I would have loved to have seen somebody do that at the Vanderbilt game, and nobody stepped up to do it. And Nick Saban's squads had a lot of dudes like that. They had a bunch of alpha males on there. And I think this team does too. But when the main coach leaves, everybody's sort of just sniffing around to wait and see who's going to be the true alpha of all this. And I want it to be Milroe so badly. I really do. And I think he's going to be a good pro. And everybody, on the SEC show, one of the guys brought up, I don't know why, that Milroe, Alabama doesn't do Milroe around each end to start every drive just to go ahead and get you 5-6 yards. The catch there is we do it not on first down as much. That has sort of become our fallback. Like, oh, we can't get anything going. Let's run Milroe around and run a sweep. And I think he's getting hit a little bit too much. I mean, I've heard a lot of Alabama fans sort of point to, hey, it looks like he's getting hit more than we want a quarterback to get hit. And you forget because he's a monster human being and he's built like a Greek god. And you're like, yeah, but when you get hit by other dudes who look like Greek gods, it hurts. So I would like, we want to see Jam Miller get some of those carries or Justice Haynes get some of those carries because neither one of those guys have really been able to get off to what I would call a running start, and we'd like for them to.
Let's talk some more running game. Let's talk a little defense. Let's talk about keys to victory for Tennessee and Alabama. It's essentially a pick 'em, right? I mean, it's a 2.5-point dog. Tennessee is at home, 3 points of the home team. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a close one. So we'll come back and we'll wrap up this edition of Locked On Vols and Locked On Bama when we return.
I do want to tell you about hymns, though. I know, look, hey, sometimes it can be a little embarrassing. It's probably a little embarrassing hearing all this coming from me. You'd rather be embarrassed now than be embarrassed when you need this stuff. So listen up. Look, HIMS is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. HIMS provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in a discreet package for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. So start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey, we got a final segment left of this Locked On Thursday. Locked On Vols meets Locked On Bama, and I do want to go back and take back what I said about the pick'em. That's not how spreads work, but it's going to be.
I didn't want to correct you.
I said that, and then I'm still talking, and in my mind, I don't know if you do this. If you've gotten so good at talking behind a microphone, like you're talking, then you're having a conversation in your mind, like, "Hey, you dummy!" Like that's not what that means.
That's not how that works.
Anyway, it's going to be a close game, and
in your scenario, Alabama should be a 6-point favorite on a
neutral
field.
Exactly. Yeah. That's not how that works, and this is not the first time I have talked lines on this show. Anyway, Dylan Sampson has been phenomenal. I know that's going to be a big part of the scout defensive game plan for Alabama, and it's kind of funny, man. That's why I think that Tennessee's not going to be like this offensively for much longer. Like 2 games they've been shut out in the first half. What? Tennessee is historically, under Josh Heupel, a fast starting team. Started fast against Alabama, started fast against Georgia. Don't always win those games, but even against the big dogs or whatever, whenever you're still an underdog, you're starting fast. That's not been Tennessee and SEC play so far this year. Dylan Sampson as well. He's been so great in the second half the last 2 weeks. First half, Tennessee can't find the run game, but it's come along, and he's, of course, leading the SEC in rushing. He's got 15 rushing touchdowns. He's a good one, and he's obviously been a big part of helping Nico out when Nico's been struggling. So for Tennessee to win this football game, got to run the football, got to start off better, got to get the offense flowing a little bit in that first half, but I think Dylan Sampson's going to be a huge part of that. For Alabama to win this football game, what's something that they need to focus on?
Well, I think you do focus on Sampson, obviously. I think the way you beat Alabama is taking them deep if you're accurate with it. Alabama's been susceptible to the deep ball, just not many people have hit it. Now, Carson Beck hit it a couple of times late. I know that Pavia hit it one time on a 4th down. Nobody thought he was going deep. That's almost a outlier than anything. But South Florida had some open passes that they missed deep. South Carolina ended up hitting some deep ones late. I think even Wisconsin had a couple of shots at it that they just missed their receivers. Now, if the only attack that Tennessee has is Sampson, then I feel good about Alabama's chances. I love him as a running back. He's got probably about as many yards as Milroe and Miller and Justice Haynes combined rushing. So, I mean, because he's almost at 700, and I don't think any of those guys are anywhere close to that. So, but I look at Tennessee's offensive output this year, and you go back to their first the first 3 games, they 69, 51, and 71, right? The next 3 games is 25, 19, and 23. And I discounted the Oklahoma offensive issues because I was like, well, Tennessee knew that Oklahoma offensively couldn't do anything. So why speed it up and like give up a pick six like Auburn did to them.
In the second half, they literally changed their game plan because one, they had 2 backup offensive tackles in there and they couldn't protect. But then what about Arkansas? What about Florida?
Well, I know that's what I was going to say now. But see, what the problem is, I think when you get on a roll offensively, and then it's just the way sports are. Like, it's the way life is. You do something to change it. You're like, okay, I'm going to change it up because of this. And you sort of talk yourself into doing something different. And the next thing you know, you can't get that momentum back. Yeah. And it feels like that's where Tennessee is because offensively, they were putrid the first halves of these last 2 games. Mm-hmm. And Florida is a good D. Arkansas has a good D. But the Florida game was at home. I mean, I can't believe that Tennessee couldn't put any points up on that squad. Even if it was like a pick six, I thought they'd score something. But, if Alabama – I think Alabama needs to rely on Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams as a big connection. I've been begging for Alabama to get the running game going with Jam Miller or Justice Haynes. It just hadn't come to fruition. Like you said, at this point, you sort of are what you are, and I don't know that our running game is going to produce a 700-yard rusher, much less a 1,000-yard rusher. So I think our best weapons are Ryan Williams, and more Ryan Williams to go with Jalen Milroe. And maybe do some – I would love to see Alabama do a screen to a running back. I would love that. Not a flare-out, an actual screen. Those are things I'd like to see. But whatever it takes to win is what I'm going to deal with. Here's one other thing that sticks out to me. Alabama hadn't attempted a lot of field goals this year. I think Graham Nicholson – he may only be 1 of 2. I can look up the stats here in a minute. But, this guy won the Lou Groza Award last year. Mm-hmm. And he just hadn't kicked a lot of them, hadn't had to. As Alabama's been, touchdown or bust, it seems like. And I wonder if this comes down to a field goal, if that's going to be an issue, because that place is nuts. And it has come down to a field goal there before, and it's cost Alabama.
He is 1 for 2.
Yeah. I thought he missed his first one of the year a few games ago against Wisconsin, I think it was. And then he made one a couple of games ago, and he just doesn't attempt a lot of them. Now he kicks a lot of extra points, but
28 yards. He's 1 for 2. His made was from 28 yards. His miss was somewhere in the 40 range. But nonetheless, quickly, I know we're up against it a little bit. You spoke briefly. I want defense. I want to talk about defense. Tennessee front 7, defensive line. They're going to play 13 guys. You've heard that song and dance. James Pierce, Joshua Joseph, and not just those guys, man. Like the interior, Amari Thomas, Omar Norman Lott, Bryson Eason, Elijah Simmons. I mean, they just keep coming. Linebackers lost Keenan Peely. Huge deal. But because Tennessee's been playing so many young linebackers already, it's not like they're going to be shell-shocked at this moment. Secondary, safeties, suspect a little bit. Cornerbacks, really good with Jermon McCoy, the transfer from Oregon State. Ricky Gibson, the sophomore. They've been fantastic. Again, Tennessee's defense overall, pretty solid. Alabama's defense, you talked about the secondary, how they've been giving opportunities to opposing offenses connect down the field. A little bit different, not much 3-4. It's more of a 4-2-5, a little bit of 3-man front. I know it's multiple, but for Kane Womack, what's this defense look like a little bit?
Well, people are really on Kane Womack right now. I mean, they really are. I mean, the defense has let some folks down. There's no doubt about it. Even though I've been one of those like in the moment that has sort of been down on Kane, as the week goes on, I go, okay, I'm going to give him a little bit more time just to be sure that this isn't right. Now, there's some people that have already made up their mind on him. That's the way it's human nature now. But I'm willing to give him a little more time. Let's see what he does against Tennessee. Look, this if you had told me at the beginning of the season that who's going to be Alabama's most formidable foe offensively, I probably would have said Tennessee.
Yeah.
Now, Georgia overall, but offensively, I would have said Tennessee. And obviously that didn't necessarily come to fruition, but I still think it's tough. And so if he can hold Tennessee, if Alabama can hold Tennessee to 17, 20 points, even 21, 24 points, I feel very good about Alabama's chances. If Tennessee gets in the 30s, I'm really, really worried.
I think I said it earlier this week. I think Tennessee needs to score, at least 27, 28 points to win this game. And that's if your defense is coming to play and your defense is, fourth down stops and third down stops and turnovers. And that's not one of those games where your defense allows an 80-yard run from Jalen Milroe or whatever. So I'm kind of with you there. On that note, time for the picks. That spread's 2.5. in favor of the given 2.5 points to the Volunteers. That total is 56.5 over at FanDuel. Luke, how do you see this game going, man? How do you think Alabama's going to get the win on the road?
I do. I'm not super confident about it, so I'll go 30 to 24. I think that's somewhere in that neighborhood. Again, I don't feel fantastic about it. I do feel like if both teams play their best, I certainly like Alabama. I think being in Knoxville bothers me a little bit. Is Kalen DeBoer's first game. I mean, everybody said, well, you've been on the road at Vanderbilt. No, that was 80% Alabama people, and there only seats 28 people. So no, that wasn't a road game. I know we went on the road to Wisconsin. I was there. It's not intimidating. It's not the SEC. It's fun. I loved it. It was a great new venue, but it's not the SEC. And Knoxville's going to be different. But Kalen DeBoer coaches really well in big games historically, whereas he coaches down to some teams who are inferior sometimes historically. So I think Alabama gets a win. I'll go 30-24. I just don't put a lot of confidence in it is all.
So this is essentially the first true road game in the SEC. We're not counting Vanderbilt.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. And you can't count Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
You can't.
I mean,
it was 80% Alabama people at least.
Vanderbilt's having, I know we got to go. Vanderbilt's having a great season, getting some wins, got a quarterback. They got Tennessee, they got Alabama, they got Texas on the home slate this year.
Well, and guess what? They had to call people to come help them move the goalposts. They didn't have enough people to move the goalposts. They had to come after the game.
I do not believe that Tennessee's going to be shut out in the first half of the third straight game. I do not believe, for as good as Dylan Sampson is and is having a season, that he is going to wait until the third quarter to come around. Tennessee blocked it up a little bit better for Nico last week. I think they'll take a step in that right direction. I love this defense. Knowing that, like you, man, it's like I don't have a whole lot of confidence in this pick, but you are at home. Tennessee's got a lights-out defense, and I do think Alabama's kind of been a little all over the place. I'll take Tennessee, but I'm like, I don't have a lot of confidence. Give me Tennessee 30 to 27 Tennessee at home at Neyland Stadium. So,
all right. That seems about on par for both of us.
We will see what happens. It's a huge game. Third Saturday in October. Hey, Vol fans, for more information on Alabama leading up the kickoff, give Luke a shout out over there at Locked On Bama. Same for Bama fans. If you want to know more about Tennessee, give Locked On Vols a listen. Here later today, tomorrow, and up until kickoff. Appreciate you guys, as always, for making us your first listen, your first watch. Check out Locked On SEC. When you're done here today, give Chris Gordy a listen and find out about some other games around the Southeastern Conference. Oh, what other games? This is the game. This is the game. I know there's another big game, but this is the game that we're going to be paying attention to. All that and more over on Locked On SEC as well. For Luke, I am Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys, as always, for joining us here on the Locked On Podcast Network.